at the 2015 South Carolina AgriBiz and Farm Expo, and I'm speaking with Mr. Thompson Smith, and he is the District Director with the South Carolina Farm Bureau. I want to welcome you and thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Donna. It's a pleasure to be talking with you, and I'm really enjoying the event.
It is an amazing event, and you know, as we were talking earlier, it's amazing what's happened from last year to this year in terms of the many different exhibitors that are here and the different programs that are here. Now, you're not unlike a lot of the other people here, in that you grew up on a farm. It was in your family for many years, and I wonder what you've seen over time in terms of how farming has changed.
Well, that's a very interesting topic, because you're right. I was born on a farm, been involved in agriculture all of my life. And it is interesting to study the history of agriculture, and then actually what I've seen in my lifetime is the many changes, and most of them have to do with technology, the size of farming operations, the diversity of crops that are now being grown. So it's been real inspirational to see the changes over the years and the advancements that agriculture has made.
And in terms of the work that goes on your farm in South Carolina's upstate, tell me a little bit about that, just so I'll know.
Okay. Well, on my own personal farm, and I'm what would be known as a part-time farmer, in that I'm a full-time employee of the South Carolina Farm Bureau. But over the years, I've grown a diversity of crops. I really do like to grow produce. One of my specialties has always been melons, cantaloupes, and watermelons. It's what I really enjoy growing, but I do some row crop operations. I have some agri-attainment activities. I have in the past given farm tours. I kind of did away with that a few years ago, but I still operate a commercial fishing lake, where I open my pond to the public to come in and have a fishing experience.
Wonderful, and that is something that we're seeing with farming now, that it's always been critically important to feed us, but there are so many other aspects of it that people are excited about.
Well, who thought or who knew when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s and being educated at Clemson in the 70s, that somebody would pay you to visit your farm.
Right.
Most people had grown up around the farm, they were anxious to get away because the work was too difficult. But no, I discovered quite by accident in the 1980s that people would come to me and say, hey, can I bring a group of children to your farm? And I started by just allowing them to do it for free, just for goodwill for agriculture. Then it quickly turned into, I'm having to hire extra help, I'm having to purchase wagons, I'm having to purchase insurance. And so you have to charge. You have to charge to do it, and it has turned into a big business for agriculture, especially near population centers.
And it's so important. I mean, it's very good for some farmers that have the time to do it, or that are making it work by charging something.
Right.
But at the same time, there's so much discussion about where your food comes from, but there's so many more elements to it, like not only where it comes from, but how it gets to you, how it gets in the ground in the first place.
Well, that's been another phenomenon that's kind of really occurred in the last 10 years, is the consumer's interest of where their food comes from. They want locally produced food, they want slow food, they want organic, they want sustainable. They're really interested, for the first time in my lifetime, of where their food comes from. So it's given us another challenge in agriculture, but it's also given us opportunities through agri-attainment type activities to bring students, teachers, parents, the general public onto a farm so that they get a little bit of taste of what an actual working farm looks like. but it's also given the farmers an opportunity to produce a little extra income to keep that farm sustainable, which means you've got to make a profit to continue to farm that operation.
Right, right. I don't know of too many people in any industry that are going to make things happen like that on no assistance of any type. So I think it makes perfect sense, and it certainly is something that the rest of us that are not living on the farm appreciate the farms more, and it's a wonderful experience. And that reminds me that your work with the Farm Bureau. That's another area that is so broad and expansive in terms of what the Farm Bureau is involved with. It's the Farm Bureau Federation, first of all. Now, what makes it a federation?
Good question. And most all of the public is aware of the Farm Bureau name. They're aware of some of our services that we provide to our members, most prominently our insurance operations. But people need to understand that the Farm Bureau was created as a nonprofit membership organization for the sole purpose of representing agriculture. We like to refer to it as the voice of agriculture. We're an agricultural advocate. And that we have been. We were formed on the American Farm Bureau level, the national level, in 1919 here in South Carolina in 1944.
Okay.
And we continue to serve that need to this day, but we are primarily funded the Federation. We are a federation of county farm bureaus. We're organized in each county. They're an independent unit, and they federate themselves together into the South Carolina Farm Bureau so that we can combine some resources so that we can better represent all of South Carolina agriculture by having the resources that we need.
Right, right. Tell me a little bit about some of the programs that you're involved with.
Well, we were just talking about educating the consumer and educating the public, and that is a large part of what we do, is try to educate the public about agriculture, about the environment, of where their food comes from, the quality of food. And one of the programs that we're really proud of is called the Ag in the Classroom program. And this is a separate foundation that we created a number of years ago that primarily serves to educate teachers so that they can take agriculture into their classroom and educate their individual students, primarily by blending agriculture into the other curriculum areas, whether it be science, math, history, geography, or whatever. So that's been a very successful program for us.
Wonderful.
We also, the unique thing that Farm Bureau does that you can't really go out and buy anywhere else on the street is the fact that we are an advocate. We have 2 registered lobbyists that work the General Assembly of South Carolina year-round. We work with regulatory agencies. We do have a staff person that's primarily charged with helping our county farm bureaus work with county government. And we also have a staff person that works along with the American Farm Bureau to work with Congress, the administration, and other federal regulatory agencies. So this is the really unique thing, and probably the most essential thing that Farm Bureau does for agriculture in South Carolina is try to affect the laws that are passed, or in a lot of cases not passed, that would be damaging to agriculture, and also work with the regulatory agencies.
Now I have to ask you, before I talk to you, a little bit more about what some of the priorities are in terms of agricultural lobbying, but in terms of the General Assembly makeup, I would imagine that when the Farm Bureau started, that there may have been a lot more farmers in the General Assembly than there are today. Is that correct? Or?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you go back and look in the late 40s and early 50s, when Farm Bureau was really taking hold, getting started, and establishing themselves in this state, and I like to kind of smile and say it really wasn't that hard a job. you had a large number of the members of the General Assembly that listed agriculture as at least one of their occupations, or they were at least agricultural landowners.
Okay.
A large part of the population, even if they were not on the farm, they had grown up on the farm and had left the farm after World War II. So everybody had an appreciation for agriculture. All you had to do was say, we're here to represent the farmers back in your district, and everybody fell into line. They wanted to help agriculture. After all, it's mom, apple pie, and the American way.
Oh, right.
So that's changed.
Yes.
As you well know, there are some members of the General Assembly that list agriculture as one of their endeavors, but I don't believe we have anybody in the General Assembly right now that considers themselves a full-time farmer. Mm-hmm. Part-time farmers, agricultural interests, but it's become incumbent upon us to educate. Educate. And we're fortunate, very fortunate here in South Carolina, that our members of our General Assembly here in South Carolina really do appreciate agriculture. They've been very concerned, very generous, very protective of the agricultural industry here in South Carolina, and for that we're very grateful, and the population of the state should be grateful that we're protecting our agricultural resources.
Well, and it's also a wonderful time to be involved with agriculture,
It
with
is.
all the things that are going on. But getting back to the advocacy, particularly here in South Carolina, and looking at the county level and at the state level, what are some of the big issues on the horizon that concern the state's farmers?
Good question, and we try to identify those each year. The way Farm Bureau establishes our policy or our position that we'll take on an issue is through the County Farm Bureau up through our state convention. In other words, we cannot establish a policy that was not first created or suggested by a County Farm Bureau. So it truly is a grassroots organization, not a top-down organization, but everybody can see some of the obvious issues, and you hear about it, and some of the issues that affect the general public we're also interested in, like infrastructure, roads and bridges in South Carolina. That's one of our policies that we're going to be working on, and one of the issues that we're going to be monitoring closely. While the interstates are important to agriculture, we're also concerned about the rural roads and bridges that connect our farms to the markets. And we've got to have not all the money going to an interstate or a primary highway, but we also need funding going to the infrastructure in rural areas also. Another issue that we worked on last year and we'll continue to work on, there's a big issue that if you're a landowner in this state and you have someone trespassing on your property, illegally trespassing, then there's a high probability that as a landowner you could become liable for something that happens to them while they're illegally on your property. We've tried to work with the General Assembly. We got close to a solution last year, we hope, and in this new General Assembly we'll be able to come up with a solution to that so that we can limit the liability for landowners as people that we didn't charge them, we didn't allow them to be on the property,
they didn't come
but
to the
they're
door
there.
to get in.
They're there. And that may seem illogical to a lot of people that could even be the possibility, but in today's world, litigious society that we live in, that's the way it is, so we have to kind of protect ourselves from those type issues also. But water has become we grew up hearing about water issues in the western part of the United States. Never thought about it here in the southeast because that was one of the resources that we had an abundance of. But it's become more and more of a concern. It's become more and more of a scarce resource. But it's a resource that agriculture absolutely depends on. So we need to continue to maintain access to surface water and groundwater for agriculture. The current issue is more focused on surface water. And we're going to be monitoring that issue. There's some very good laws on the books right now that protect agriculture's access to water. There's some concern, some movement as they may want to restrict agriculture's access to that water, or at least document and go through more of a laborious process to guarantee or to allow them to have access to it. We're going to be monitoring that because it's essential. We care as much about the streams and rivers and ponds and the environment as anybody. But as we're always telling them, you can't shut the irrigation water off to a farm for a week or two because there's nothing left to come back to. You might can close a manufacturing plant for a couple of weeks and then restart it. But if you did that to an agricultural operation, you've lost the production for an entire year.
That's a complicated issue because there's so much negotiation.
And it's an emotional issue with people, and that's why we're trying to get the facts, the scientific facts out there. And DHEC has been working to do a study on the rivers and the flows and what would be an appropriate minimum flow to protect all of our rivers and streams in this state. We support that 100%. Anxious to see their report, and we will support maintaining minimum stream flows, healthy stream flows, adequate stream flows for other industries, but also we want to protect agriculture.
Sure. Well, I can tell that you're extremely passionate about it, but it's very good to have someone in your seat that also is gaining the information that's helping the rest of us understand the complexity of the issues that you deal with.
That's one of the reasons I feel lucky to be involved, and not just as an employee. It's like I tell them I would be a volunteer if they weren't paying me.
Right.
But you will find that with all of our staff. I mean, we don't work just because we're paid to do it. We're passionate about agriculture and the issues that we work.
And in terms of your vision for what South Carolina agriculture should be, and that you want it to be, what would you say that is?
That's another interesting topic because I've been around long enough to have seen a lot of changes, and things that you thought were going to happen didn't, and things you didn't expect did. And that's kind of where I'm at, and I think the Farm Bureau organization is at. We really can't predict, and maybe we shouldn't even try to direct what the future of agriculture is going to look like in this state. Let agriculture, let the business climate, let the economics dictate which direction that we go, because anytime that you box yourself in, chances are down the road that you're going to be on the wrong page in the wrong direction. You're going to have to change abruptly. Being from the upper part of the state, I've seen this diversity that's developed over the years, and I think that's what you're going to continue to see in agriculture, is just an inspiring and mind-blowing explosion of diversity as we move forward into agriculture. Because who thought 20 years ago that we'd be growing, we would have a potato farm, a major potato farm in this state? A sod would be a major crop that we're growing in South Carolina. So I think you're going to continue to see diversity develop. I had a farmer ask me the other day, said, "Do you know anything about growing hops that you use in beer production?" And they'd had some of this local microbreweries coming on. There's a big desire to say, hey, can we get locally produced hops?
Right.
So who would have sat around the desk and said, hey, this is the direction we're going, but that's what the market may end up demanding.
I can imagine that it would. It is amazing, and it does make a big difference as to how a beer tastes. It's an exciting time to be a part of agriculture, isn't it?
And that's the reason we've got to keep things flexible in South Carolina, and not just focused in one particular area or in one direction. The Commissioner of Agriculture, Farm Bureau, Clemson University, everybody has celebrated the success of agriculture, and all of those, it's not just the individual farmers, but all of those agencies have contributed to that success. I know that, we established a few years ago a study done, I believe it was 2008, that agriculture is the largest economic engine, the largest industry in this state. It's somewhere around $34 billion worth of economic impact. I know that a new study has been done, and those results will be released probably soon in the next couple of weeks. This is going to show an even larger impact on agriculture. So we're very proud of where we're at, and we want the consumers, the citizens, the voters of South Carolina to understand what agriculture contributes, and we'd like their support in continuing to have a favorable environment.
Well, I really wish you well, because what makes it good for you makes it good for the rest of us.
That's exactly right.
And we appreciate what you do for the state of South Carolina.
Glad to do it, and proud that we're able to do it.
I've been speaking with Mr. Thompson Smith, and he is with the South Carolina Farm Bureau Federation.